And so frameworks, as you know, are key elements of monitoring and evaluation plans that are able to depict the project components and the sequence of steps that will be very, very important to be able to achieve the desired project results as expected. Now, again, also, they are able to help increase understanding of the project or program goals and objectives. And so it is important to ensure that we're able to increase the understanding of the project or program goals and objectives. So it is important to ensure that we're able to enhance the understanding of the project or program goals and objectives. Then again, also M&E frameworks also delineate the internal and external elements that could actually affect the project or program success. And so it is important to make sure that we can actually be able to delineate the internal and external elements that could actually be able to affect the project or program success as expected. Now, the other thing is that the M&E frameworks are also crucial for actually understanding and analyzing how a project or a program is supposed to work. So it is important to make sure that we are able to understand and analyze how a project or program is supposed to work. So it is important to ensure that M&E frameworks are able to understand and analyze how the project is supposed to work. Then again, also, when you talk about M&E frameworks, it is also good to mention that they are simply or tables or pictures or maps that visualize the factors that drive an intervention, as well as illustrating how a program should actually be able to work. So it is important to be able to note that. M&E frameworks are basically models. They will actually be tables, they will actually be pictures, they will actually be maps that help us visualize the factors that drive an intervention, as also illustrate how a program should actually be able to work. And as you look at the three different types that I mentioned, you will actually be able to see that. You will actually be able to see that some are presented as tables, some are presented as pictures, some are presented as maps, just to be able to visualize the factors that actually drive an intervention as expected. So those are some of the things that we actually need to be able to consider. And so therefore, there are three different types or typologies of M&E frameworks, as we have just mentioned, and all of you now are aware that we have three of them. We have the conceptual framework, we have the results framework, and also we have the logical model framework. So this is something that we are able to have. So we have the logical framework, the results framework, we have the conceptual framework as the three main types of frameworks that we can actually be able to come across. So let's start with the first one, which is the conceptual framework. And I know most of you must have done your master programs in universities, and I know most of you have been required to do a research project. And if you've done a research project, then you will understand when you talk about a conceptual framework, because it is also known as conceptual framework, is also referred to as the research framework. So we're able to, you can call it research framework, or you can also call it conceptual framework. So for some of us who have done research, you know that you were required to be able to prepare a research framework. And so it is important to make sure that you're able to have that as much as possible. Research has a lot of connection with monitoring and evaluation, because a lot of what we do in monitoring and evaluation also relates so much on research concepts as much as possible. So this is basically a diagram that is able to illustrate what are the causal linkages between the key components of a program and also the outcomes of interest as expected. And so it is a diagram that basically illustrates the causal linkages between the key components of a program and the outcomes of interest as expected. Now again, it is also useful for identifying and illustrating the factors and the relationships that actually influence the outcome of a program or an intervention. And so it is important to make sure that it is very, very useful to make sure that we can identify, and again also we can be able to illustrate the factors and the relationships that actually influence the outcome of a program or an intervention. And so by identifying the variables that factor into program performance and depicting the ways that they are able to interact, then the results can reasonably be expected from the program activities actually outlined. So, so by identifying the variables that factor into program performance and also depicting the ways that they actually are able to interact, the results can reasonably be expected from the program activities as outlined. And this is what we refer to as a conceptual framework. So, so when we talk about a conceptual framework, we're simply referring to this kind of a framework. So as you can see there, we have individual and household characteristics, we have health services, we have community factors, we have programs. And so you can see what we are saying is that that the program that is being implemented in this place, together with other donors, other NGOs in government, when they come together, they will actually be able to combine and bring in community factors that are helpful in ensuring that health services can actually be provided. And when these health services are actually provided, the individual and household characteristics will actually be able to utilize these health services. And if these health services are actually utilized, then we can actually be able to have healthy practices being practiced. And also this will also be able to lead into healthy outcomes as well. So, and so that's why we're saying conceptual framework is able to, is actually able to lead to all this that we are saying there. So, so ensuring that these different concepts are able to link to be able to provide you to a particular outcome. So, so normally that's how a conceptual framework will normally be able to look like. So as you can see, as I've just explained, that this particular program or project, in addition to other donors providing health services in order to increase service utilization with the ultimate outcome of improved health. So, so in other words, you're able to, you're actually able to show exactly how the project will actually be able to match up so that it can actually be able to provide that conceptual framework as expected. Now, secondly, the other thing is the results framework. The results framework. And the results framework is something that we actually need to also be able to look at. The results framework is also referred to as the strategic framework. And this is basically a diagram that basically shows the direct causal relationships between incremental results of the key activities all the way to the strategic objectives and also the strategic goals of the intervention. So it's basically a diagram that is able to show us the linkages between the causal relationships and the incremental results of all the key activities all the way to the strategic objectives and the strategic goals of the intervention. And this clarifies the points in an intervention at which results can actually be monitored. And so this basically is able to clarify the points in an intervention at which results can actually be monitored and evaluated. And so it's very, very important for that particular purpose. And so you can see some sort of a diagram that basically tries to outlay the results framework. And so this can be represented as a diagram or in a table. So it can take either formats. So you can still represent this in a table because you said frameworks are matrices. And so just put a diagram here to make you easily understand what we are looking at. And so you can see it's just shows you the interconnection between the intermediate results that contribute to the strategic objectives and those ones that finally contribute to the goals. So, so it's normally something that is able to explain that. So the strategic objective, so it basically is the most ambitious result that can be achieved and for which the organization is willing to be held responsible. And thereafter, we have the intermediate result, which is the discrete result or the outcome that is necessary to be able to achieve a strategic objective. And under each intermediate result, you will basically be able to have subordinate or intermediate result or sub intermediate results as expected. So you can have either of those results as expected. So so that's basically what we refer when you talk about the results framework. So as I said earlier on, this type of framework is used by USAID in what is known as their performance monitoring plans, which are basically tables that specify the different results and basically how you are going to monitor the achievement of some of those results. So, so for some of us who also work in USAID supported programs, you understand what PMPs are, that is performance monitoring plans. I know most of us understand what performance monitoring plans are, or PMPs, as expected. Now the third type of framework is what we call the logic model, and this is by standard is what we call an M&E framework. So most of us are used to understand this as the typical M&E framework that we can actually be able to use because it is a diagram that provides a streamlined linear interpretation of a project planned use of resources and its desired ends. So, so that's something that we're able to find. It has essentially 5 components that we need to be able to look at. And it is important for us to be able to look at that as much as possible. So, so essentially, it has 5 essential components that we actually need to be able to look at as much as possible. So it has 5 essential components, and the first one is what we call inputs. Inputs is the first component that we actually have. And inputs simply are the resources that are invested in a program. For example, the technical assistance, the computer, the condoms or training that are provided. And so that's what will be there. And then again, also we have activities, that is the activities that are carried out to achieve the program objectives. Basically, those are some of the things that we will be able to have. And then of course, we have to show the outputs, that is the immediate results that have been achieved at the program or project level through the execution of activities. And then after that, we are able to see the outcomes, which is the shared, which is basically a set of short-term or intermediate results at the population level achieved by the program through the execution of activities as expected. So, so basically, we can be able to have what we are going to refer as outcomes. that we actually need to be able to look at. So, so this is a set of short-term or intermediate results at the population level that have actually been achieved by the program through the execution of activities as expected. Now, lastly, the last component of this will be the impact, as you already know. And you know that we refer to impact as the long-term effects or the end results of a program or project. For example, we will be talking about the change in health status. Is one of the things that we can actually be able to talk about. That is the long-term effect or end results of the program. For example, the changes in the health status really become something that we can actually be able to talk about. And therefore, the other thing is, of course, the logic model. And when you talk about the logic model, we are basically looking at this. And so in a diagram, we can say, you can see what we are trying to show. We are showing the inputs, the processes or the activities. Then we have the outputs, then we have outcomes, then we have the impact. For instance, the example that we have used here is for a HIV project. So you can see the inputs that are required and then the activities that will actually be able to follow based on the inputs. Then, of course, the outputs will be that people will basically be able to learn their HIV status. The outcomes that will be expected is that clients will be able to develop personalized HIV risk reduction strategies. Risky behaviors will actually be reduced. And then again, the impact will be the HIV transmission rates will actually reduce. And then the HIV incidence will also be able to drastically decrease. And then the HIV morbidity and mortality rates will actually also be able to decrease as expected. So, so those are some of the things that we actually need to be able to have in place as much as possible. Now, the last thing that now we need to focus on after showing the different types of the M&E frameworks that we have, we definitely also need to emphasize a few things and how do we actually use these M&E frameworks in M&E planning. And the way we use M&E frameworks in planning is by the use of